Got a table saw, use the table saw. But if you don't, you can use this. That was different. Okay. Hey everyone, this is Martin, and I am getting ready to show you how to make the cheapest, easiest, quickest, least amount of tools window shutters that you'll ever do. And the best part about it is that I'm only going to use 2 power tools and a couple of other hand tools, and I'm not going to use these. I mean, it would make it slightly quicker, but just to show that you can do it with the very most minimal number of tools, I'm going to do it with just a screw gun, a jigsaw, and tape measure, pencil, things like that. So, okay, so this is it. This table saw is going to be my workbench today. So all I'm going to use is a jigsaw. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple links to a couple of decent quality of the power tools down below the video here. They probably won't be these brands because these were kind of expensive, but all I'm going to use is a jigsaw, screw gun, tape measure, pencil, speed square. And you know, honestly, you could probably get rid of those things right there if you're brave enough to just do it without. But very minimal tools, and you're going to end up with a nice product when it's done. Did I mention these are going to be cheap? So really, really cheap. So each shutter is going to be made up of 2 boards, and all I do is go out and buy a couple of these fence pickets, and I'm only going to use a little over half of each one of them. So there will be some leftover, but I'll find other purposes for that. And these I got for about $1.50 a piece. So each shutter is going to be made up of 2 of these. So you're going to have $3 on this side, $3 on that side, and that's about it. Minus a little bit of paint and a couple of screws. But still, as cheap as you, even if you have to pay a couple of dollars a board, they're still going to be cheap. So when I'm making these, I usually like to do them about 1 inch above the trim and 1 inch below the trim. So we're going to go with 45 inches total from top to bottom on each of these shutters. So, and I'm doing them for, well, I've got 2 of the windows down. I've got 2 more windows to do. So we're really only going to be making 4 shutters, 2 per window. All right, so we're going to go 45 on this one. So these pieces we'll be using for the back braces on the back side, and I'll be cutting those down to a smaller size as well. Okay, speed square. Now, as I said, it would be much quicker to just throw these over here on the miter saw and whack them, and but just in case you don't have one of these, we're going to do it with this. And I've even got a dull blade in this, so even at that, it's still going to be quick. Now, I have done in the past, these fence pickets come with what they call dog ears on them, and you can do that down on the bottom too, but in this case we're leaving the bottom square, and the top of them will have the corners cut off of them. And since they're already cut off, it makes it that much easier. Okay, so each shutter will have 2 boards. I'm going to end up putting a space of about the thickness of one of those boards in between each one, so there'll be about a space like that. And on the back side there will be a cleat, and the shutters themselves, when you have the two of them plus the space, we've got about 11.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and make the cleats on the back side about 11 inches, and that way they won't stick out the sides. So I will need 2 cleats per shutter, and I'm only going to use half of a board. So they're each going to be 11 inches. So I've got an 11, and at 22, and I'll need another one. So about half the width of this is about 2 7/8. So that's what I'll be cutting these at. Rather than measure each one of them out, I'll go ahead and cut this one and just lay it down and draw a line on the next one. Got a table saw? Use the table saw. But if you don't, you can use this. That was different. Okay. And these would be cleats for one shutter. Before I get too much farther along, I want to talk about tools just a little bit. And if you're just starting out and you don't have any tools, you know, back when I started out, I didn't have anything to really work with in the way of tools. And I mentioned this was a pretty expensive jigsaw, for example. I did not have the money to be able to buy a good one of these. This thing is almost 40 years old now. It's still going strong. And it's, but that's not what I started with. And I started with what I could afford, and what I could afford was basically the cheapest thing out there. And so there's nothing wrong with that. If you can afford to buy a little bit better quality tool, you'll always be glad that you did, just because they'll hold up much better and they're easier to use. They're more efficient. They last longer. There's just a lot of reasons to buy a better tool. But if you can't, you know, get something, make a list, make a priority list of the things that's important. And I would say that kind of on a backwoods type of a property, if you're looking at shop tools, there's never, I don't think there's almost ever a day goes by where I don't use a cordless screw gun. I've gone to where I've gone to impact drivers. This is an impact driver. I've got a set of drills that have a regular chuck on the end of them for putting drill bits in as well. And this is like the top priority of just a shop tool. The next step of priority might be a skill saw, and I've got a couple of them with cords on them, and I've got a couple of them that are cordless. And you know, I've kind of gotten to where I like the cordless ones just for the convenience of being able to take them anywhere and not having to worry about plugging them in. So, you know, that's an option. You have to decide what's best for you on that. But even if all you do is start out with a tool here and a tool there and start building up your inventory of tools and equipment, the more you have, the more versatile and the more things that you'll be able to do with them. I just picked the least amount of tools that I could get by with, and I suppose if you wanted to go with a hand screwdriver, you could probably do that when it comes to attaching these all together. And you could probably even get by with a hand saw and a scroll saw for cutting all of this stuff. But at the very least, do yourself a favor, get a couple of power tools. Another tip, when you're cutting, always pay attention to what's underneath your board. If I was cutting like that, I'd cut right through the corner of the table saw, And I have done that before. I've cut into buckets that I've been using as a brace. I've cut into ladders. I've cut into all kinds of things. So you just have to be careful to make sure your lines are all outside whatever's holding it up underneath. One other tool. There we go. Now I can actually see what I'm doing. All right, there are the cleats. And we can get rid of this for a little while. You know, let me talk about these fence pickets again for a little bit too. I use these things for almost everything. Because they're treated, they'll hold up for the weather. They're designed as privacy fence panels, and I use them for shutters. I use them actually for trim. Sometimes we'll actually trim out windows and doors with them. Sometimes we'll cut them down a little bit narrower to trim that out. I use them for fascia panels, like this stuff, if you can see that, but fascia boards around the edge of the roof, because they hold up good for that. I've used them for deck railing or deck spindles, for the panels on deck railings, and I use them for all kinds of things just because they're inexpensive and they hold up to the weather really good. And the downside is they're only 6 feet long, so you've got to kind of plan your projects around the fact that the longest piece that you're going to be able to do it is 6 feet long. And I'm going to be doing the fascia around the generator building roof probably tomorrow, and I'll be using this again. I'll just have to use 2 pieces on the long sides of the roof of that. So they're very handy, and they're very inexpensive. Okay, one of the last things I've also got is a template of the pine tree that we're using as a cutout, and so I guess I needed another tool, which is a utility knife. And I'm just going to finish cutting this out. I took this off of the other shutter, of the other shutters that we've used upon the other 2 windows. I mean, I've seen dragonflies cutouts put into these. I've seen palm tree cutouts in them. I've seen stars and moons and things like that. So really the sky is the limit on what kind of a cutout you'd want to do. And I've done plenty of these shutters where I had no cutout at all. So it's really up to you. These are about 1/4 of an inch too long, but it's what I've got. So if I run them down in, the point is going to stick out about 1/4 inch on the face side of that. I could put them in from the front, but then you'd have the screw head showing on the front, and then plus they'd stick out the back. So either way, that's not going to work really well. So what I'm going to do is to shorten them up, I'm going to run them at an angle. There, and the only other thing we have to do is kind of figure out where we want that cutout to be. Which I'm thinking about right there. So what I'll do is I'll put the bottom of the tree trunk at 16 inches from the bottom of the shutter on all of them. Alright, so I put a couple of 4x4 blocks under here so that I could cut with the saw without worrying about jamming the blade into the top of the table saw. So we'll go ahead and cut this one out. Alright, that's simple. And this is what they look like. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and a share, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell. See you next time.